Every time you hire, you're either in danger or you're creating an opportunity. The Chinese actually have a word for that. It's called crisis. And it's made up of two characters. One means danger and the other means opportunity. So when you're hiring, you're either creating a crisis or you're preventing one. Now, the Venn diagram that we have on the screen reminds you that there are these four influences that have to come together to form what we call fit. So one of the first and most obvious characteristics that you want to look for is that area of character. If a person doesn't have character, it's not going to matter much what their skill set is. A person of character is a person that has integrity. That means they have fidelity to themselves. They are what you see. You've probably seen people that are phony baloney, right? They're not what they pretend to be. A person of integrity, well, they will never lie to you, but they're not going to lie for you either. And that's because they're loyal. They're loyal to the values of the company. They're loyal to the values that actually made them want to have this position in the first place. So people of character are also people of courage. They run towards the problem, not away from it. And then they have fortitude. That is, they have grit. They will not give up, even in the presence of adversity, hardship. They're going to stick it out. And so look for those four qualities as part of character. Competency is another one of those spheres that has to interact with character. Competency simply means that you have the skill set to do what you've been hired to do. We think of it, first of all, as understanding the task, but also understanding how that task intersects with everything else that they've been hired to do. I like to think of it as K plus E plus S. Knowledge plus experience plus skills. That's understanding. Let me illustrate. The person that can pass the book test, the written test at the motor vehicle department can get a permit. That doesn't mean they know how to drive. They have to get out on the road and eventually pass their road test. And ultimately they can do a what? Road trip. Why? Because they've gained knowledge, experience, and they've developed skills. So a person of competency is growing in those skills. The word acuity simply means a keen awareness. They're focused, they're alert, and that means they can solve problems. They get what's going on around them, and so they add great value in that way. And then they're trustworthy. You perhaps have remembered a time where you transferred something of great value into the care of somebody else. What were you saying? They're trustworthy. I remember with our first child, when we had our first babysitter, we were taking our treasure and asking that person to take the same kind of care of that child as we would. That was a big step. What did we consider that babysitter? Trustworthy. A person of competency is not followed because of their personality generally. It's their skill set that inspires others because it's both efficient and effective. They get good results. And so they become follow-worthy as part of this set of competencies. So let's add a third sphere to our fit for a good hire. They have to have compatibility. I have an iPad and I have an iPhone. They both use different kinds of power cords. Go figure, right? But the idea is they can adapt with the right piece of equipment and they can become compatible to the same power source. When you're hiring somebody, you want to make sure they're compatible with the rest of the team. And so look for affinity. Do they have the same kind of interests, same kind of values? Do they have the same kind of concept and expectations of what it is to work at the place that they're being hired? Another one is accessibility. Now, in today's economy, many people are connecting through Zoom. They're building a relationship over Zoom. So proximity is important as part of accessibility, but building a relationship through good communications. If a person is not accessible, then they're not compatible. Now, you may have a large organization and the two people will never meet, but when the work has that affinity, there has to be accessibility. So are they not only compatible in the area of having affinity and access, but do they actually complement each other? Is it the yin to the yang, in other words? Are there experiences where they have interdependence? I can't do what I do unless you do what you do. And so good compatibility relies on that other person. And then it's a non-competing environment that creates compatibility. If I have to win so that you lose, or if you win, I lose, that's a competing environment, and it does not breed good, strong compatibility on the team. When making a hire, you want to look for capacity. Capacity means they're fit for the role. When you think of a ship, it has what is called the berth, a place where they can store the cargo. They have the equipment to load it. They have the personnel that are trained. Likewise, when a person's coming into a new role, do they actually have the capacity for what you're trying to have them do as part of their employment? And many times that will be seen quickly because they will make room for more. A cargo ship that only has 2 boxes on it that are small is not living up to its potential or meeting its capacity. A small ship that's overloaded will soon tilt and sink, right? So what we're looking for is a person that has capacity, they have the room, and they want more of that capacity to be filled. So they're eager to do more, not to do more than they should and be out of balance, but not do less than what they really need to do to carry their fair share of the labor in the workforce. Multitasking is also an element of capacity. Can they do more than one thing at once? Now, understand, some people are designed, they just work better by doing one task, finishing it, and moving on to another. But capacity often has to do with, I can manage several accounts at the same time. I can have multiple tasks running at the same time. Now, I'll be the first to tell you, research is debating whether multitasking is good for the company and good for the person. But generally, you have to be able to do more than one thing at any one time. That's an element of capacity. And then finally, puissance is a matter of horsepower. It's not a word we use often, but it's a word that's really a good and powerful word. Literally, it means potency. If you were going to go and buy a Ford truck, are you going to buy a Ford Ranger, a Ford 150, 250, 350, 450, 550? Well, it depends on what you're trying to get out of it. So in puissance, you have the right horsepower and the right towing capacity, right? So if a person has capacity, they can pull the right amount of labor, the right amount of skill-based deliverables that are needed. So a Ford Ranger, for instance, can tow 3,500 pounds. A Ford 550 can tow 32,000 pounds. Some jobs you don't need to tow 32,000, but don't try and haul 32,000 with a Ford Ranger. You'll have problems. So you actually need all 4 of these realms working very well together, co-acting and co-influencing upon one another. So by understanding those 4 elements, you can help avoid the big mistakes that happen in hiring. So number 1, don't try and hire the perfect employee. Nobody has all of those 4 areas perfectly honed and designed. It's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when. A person that you hire will disappoint you. But the goal is, can we keep growing in all 4 of those areas? Now, the one thing you don't want to do is close one eye, right? Because that means I'm going to ignore a deficit in one of those areas and just pretend it doesn't exist or think that it's not important. Usually, we'll think character is important. We'll think competencies are important. We often underestimate compatibility or capacity. So what I would encourage you to do is trust but verify. Do your reference work. And then don't just tell me what you can do, show me what you can do. So when you're asking in an interview about their strengths and weaknesses, use things like, tell me about a time when you did A, B, or C. Or tell me an example of how you handled something that was not favorable in its outcome. We sometimes call those CAR stories, C-A-R. What was the challenge? What was the action you took? And what was the result that followed? And if it's always just perfect, they're probably not being straightforward with you. Finally, don't hire unilaterally. Involve other people, get input from the team, especially if they're going to be affected by this hire. We sometimes hear people say, well, you can't hire your own boss. Well, you're avoiding a problem if you let the people that will be supervised by this person or will be interacting regularly to have some input in this process. So, thinking about making a great hire, avoid those mistakes. But make sure you're looking at character, competency, compatibility, and capacity. It will serve you well. I would love to hear your stories about how you hire the best people.